President of the United States made it very clear he wants to see me and the hundreds of people who work here fired from our jobs. Our leader celebrates Americans losing their livelihoods because he can't take a joke.
Jimmy Kimmel, and he's back. The American late night show host made his return on ABC after the network briefly pulled him following his controversial remarks about Charlie Kirk's death. Let's go live to commentator and filmmaker Ami Horowitz. Ami, good evening.
Good evening. How are you, Bev?
Good, thank you. Very well. So let's just remind ourselves what Kimmel said that was so controversial. He basically, I don't know whether you have the actual quote to hand, I don't, but he basically said that MAGA were making political capital out of this killing, and that it was actually irresponsible of MAGA to be suggesting this guy was on the left. But Kimmel's back on air, of course, and what do we learn from this what is the moral to this sorry story?
Oh, God, I don't think we had enough time to cover that, Bev, to be fully honest. But I'll give you the cliff notes, right? First of all, let's be clear. He never really apologized, right? He came back on air after essentially being, he was terminated by a certain amount of affiliates of ABC, right? Disney put him back on. He's on in major cities, but over 60 different affiliates kept him off because of those statements. He didn't really apologize. In fact, he does what the left does when they realize that they're caught with their pants down, and that the person that we're talking about, in this case, it was the killer of Charlie Kirk, was in fact of the left. They say, well, he was crazy, right? Obviously, he was unbalanced, right? Of course, all these killers are unbalanced. That's not the point. The point is they are people of the left. And I think what we find here is that a couple things. First of all, I think it's fascinating that when Jimmy Kimmel got fired, that there was more outrage from the left about Jimmy Kimmel's firing than about Charlie Kirk's assassination, right? That's first of all. And second of all, the problem we have in general is not necessarily, like it's with Islamic terror. It's not about the people who are the actual terrorists, although obviously that's a problem. It's the permission structure around it, right? And that you have that with the left, that when you see killings, terrorism essentially, from the left, you have the people who are associated with the left essentially giving cover for that person, talking about how bad Charlie Kirk was, how evil he was, right? And when you say that, all you're doing is making excuses for that kind of violence. And I think the demarcation line was Mangione. And I think bringing back Kimmel into this thing, Mangione, I think, was the turning point for what we see, because Mangione got support, not demonization, support from mainstream left, including Jimmy Kimmel, who talked about how hot he was and how he did it because he was, the associated problems with healthcare coverage here in America. And I think that is ultimately the problem that we have.
Okay, Ami Horowitz, thank you so much for joining me on that. Let me get the opinions of my guests in the studio.
Have you had a random call lately from a strange number, maybe trying to sell you something or even scam you? If so, your info could be out there. That's because of data brokers, shady companies that scrape the internet for your personal details and sell them to marketers or even scammers. These days, scammers can even use AI to mimic your friends' voices and trick you into sending money. It's not just annoying. Data brokers often target vulnerable people with high-interest loans or sketchy offers. But there is a solution. Incogni, the sponsor of this video. Incogni contacts data brokers on your behalf and requests your info be deleted from their databases. And because your data can keep popping up, Incogni keeps sending removal requests to make sure it stays gone. They've just launched a new unlimited plan with custom removals. If you find your info on a weird website, just send them the link and their privacy team will work to get it taken down. Getting started is easy. Hit the link in the description, create your account and let Incogni handle the rest. It's risk-free for 30 days and you'll get 60% off an annual plan with the code GBNews. Take back control of your data with Incogni.
Gentlemen, let's talk about this Jimmy Kimmel situation. what would be the comparison, Rob, in the UK of the Jimmy Kimmel character getting canned?
Well, I've got to say, first of all, having watched his show last night, he should be cancelled immediately. The public display of emotion when he welled up with tears describing Charlie Kirk's death, as a Brit in America, I find deeply uncomfortable.
We're much more buttoned up than that, Joshua.
But I think, I mean, I'm not sure what the comparisons are, but the idea that a comedian could be pulled off in that way, whether it is through the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, sort of suggesting they're going to take a look at this, whether it's ABC being concerned about the political fallout from the White House, whether it's to do with the affiliates saying the owners of the affiliates saying they're not going to broadcast this stuff anymore. I mean, I think to see this happening in America with the First Amendment is extraordinary. Yeah. I think it's much more likely actually to happen in the United Kingdom.
See, podcaster Joe Rogan has just spoken about this as well, just today, and said that he thinks it was outrageous that the government got involved in this and that comedians should be free to speak their mind. It's quite a criticism of Trump from someone who's normally very much supportive of the president.
Joe Rogan has this wrong. Comedians are free to speak their minds. All Americans are free to speak their minds. Let's characterize what Kimmel did accurately. He lied about the affiliation and motivation of Charlie Kirk's assassin. Lied, and I use that word deliberately, characterizing him as a man of the right, when in fact he was demonstrably a man of the left and motivated to the assassination as such. And for that, the affiliates and the network, not the government, not the FCC, took him off air. And so he suffered market consequences for that. That's normal, that's a free society at work, and Kimmel is an absolute hypocrite to claim that he is any kind of champion of free speech in this. Rogan get this one wrong.
Let's see what he said, because I always think with these speech issues, it's really important to look at the actual thing that was said, because it all gets so noisy, doesn't it? Kimmel said during his monologue that the MAGA gang, the Make America Great Again gang, was desperately trying to distance itself from Kirk's suspected assassin, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. And you think it was too soon or just not appropriate?
No, it was demonstrably factually false. It was already known by the time Kimmel spoke what the motivation of the killer was, and it was not that. Okay.
Is it harder, do you think, for women to be forgiven in the court of public opinion? Roseanne Barr has never made it back onto mainstream media, has she?
Yeah, I think it's two different conversations. I do think that women face, structural barriers and sexism in media all the time, whether that's in entertainment or in politics and beyond. But I will say, I don't think that means that Roseanne Barr hasn't been successful compared to Jimmy Kimmel. She was an irrelevant, washed up celebrity who had her show brought back for a rerun for like a bunch of 60-plus-year-olds to watch. It has nothing to do with the scale and impact of a huge star and celebrity like Jimmy Kimmel. And I think it speaks to the fact that that's the only comparison case you can come up with. By the way, somebody who was fired during Donald Trump's first term to compare to this situation. Now, I will say, I saw your guest Jim Jordan on a couple of minutes ago, and I thought it was interesting that he chose to say this wasn't government censorship on your show because it's a right-wing show, but just this morning on Squawk Box CNBC, he did admit that there was government pressure here. So quick fact check on that.
Well, Josh, is it maybe not that Roseanne Barr was a woman, but it might be that she's politically considered to be right-wing?
1,000% correct. It's not male versus female. It's left versus right. In the cultural heights, all is forgiven the left. Very little is forgiven the right. And a lot of the overreaction and the panic you see now on the left is because for the first time in their lives, they're having their rules applied to them. And I welcome them to it.
Rob, what's your take on that?
Well, one thing I will say is my sister happens to be a comedian, and she would tell you as soon as she had a kid and as soon as her age got up into the high 30s, the roles started drying up and it became harder. So there are some structural issues for women that make it harder. But yeah, I mean, it does feel as if Roseanne is on some different side of the political debate, and that has been a problem for her.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, what should we go on to